Dís maríomh agus fáilte roimh go dtí GAA Gold an padchréile seo ina míadna a féchan tránóna ar 9-8 Seo blianana ar thosaigh athraithe móra a tarlúint ó thaobh na peilide na curthaile éireann le 3 bliana nuas ciarí díobartha i gréibh na móin, agus bhí athraithe tacht chomá is saoil na hamána. Chun na cluichí peile agus hamána ón bhliain sin na phlé, tá áthas ar an fáilte a chur roimh an bhirt bhainisteoir buacach ón bhliain sin, Sean Boylan na mí, Cyril Farrell le Gaillimhe agus tá Gary McDonagh an Tiri Shorling freisin fáilte roimh a bhuachalí. Anna Fire Father Join, agus Tosomi Latza. We'd start with you. 87, Sean, it had been 20 years since Meath had last won in All-Ireland, but you were coming, you got into the semi-final the previous year. With Kerry on the wane, did you consider 87 as a chance for Meath to bridge the gap?
Well, I remember after we were beaten the semi-final and then Kerry McDonald won the final, and Mick was asked what he felt the second best team in Ireland were, and he said Kerry, he met the Kerry subs. And the way things can go, they waited 11 years to get to an All-Ireland final. We just knew one thing certain, that we lost our concentration midway through the first half. It cost us the game, and against Dublin, against Kerry in that semi-final. And they gave us an education, but we learned from it. And what we had to do was that everybody, just collectively, everybody took the responsibility to try and make less mistakes, to try and do it better. And there was no such thing as a sacrifice. This was what you wanted to do. If at all possible, you wanted to win a Sam Maguire, you wanted to win an All-Ireland medal, that was it. And everything that possibly could have been done was done.
Okay, so we'll have a look at some of those steps and some of the matches indeed from that 87 campaign shortly. Cyril, for Galway, you had been there or thereabouts. You'd played in and lost the 2 previous All-Ireland finals. So there was probably a bit of pressure, was there, on you and on the team to perform and to deliver ultimately in 87?
Oh, there definitely was, because we had won in 80 and we'd been knocking at the door 85, 86 with a new team again, relatively young lads with a few of the older guys. And there was pressure on to win, like as Sean would tell you, when you get in there and lose, it's a terrible feeling. But there's no guarantee you're going to get back in again. But once the year started, would you believe, like just even winning the league in early 87, we lost every final in 86. The league, the All-Ireland, the Oireachtas at the time in the Railway Cup. But by winning the league, kind of gave us a little boost. And like we knew we weren't far off, but like to win it was still going to take a savage effort.
Okay, and again, so Galway coming good in 87. Agus Gary, bhí cuasaí eile tarlún, bhí éire a gathú, bhí annach díostíochta mar hampla sa tír, beidir ní raibh sais prévacha an Celtic Tiger fós le bra. Ach, just denkir sios an méid a bhí a tarlún te bheag nó bhór sa tír agin.
Se mar lú tú díostíocht go mór an golóir imirce go fóil. Bíal táchan an níd a gachtú seaachnúir hits an choréalta sid ar Fine Gael agus an nachdaibre as a chéile. Agus hánig Charlie agus Fianna Fáill eisi go the ríist agus somtasachas dó ag rún na PDs ní smú séchan ná nachdaibre an chéadú gan na PDs a bheith in ol táchan. Freisin níd a gachtú seaach hánig na scribchortaí na scratch cards a seaach gon chéadú riamh. Agus freisin plátí chlárachan, is going from 87 G1 a eáil in Gaile agus
Bhín doshearsa.
Dó sin ar fad. Agus ó híbal sport freisin is dó hí blian an mór hrú tímogan chumlú clascail hrú Stephen Roach in Tour de France agus an Giro d'Italia agus scríban down. Agus dair le fór an sac na héir an cáilú go Euro 88 nuair scóráil Gary Mackay go Albin i gunne an bhulgáil.
All right, bhín annach le Carcalóir agus bua gan chuine. Carcalóir a caint fé buana gan chuine beidir, bíad á clia a thugló an trachamórtas luas a téasúir, agus anion gur bhuad ar siúd an cluiche canis, bhí a bhad ní smó cainte ribhe sin faoin cluiche ceathrú canis, nuair a chas á clia agus corcaigh ar a chéile, cóscóir in gná am, an meach an breise a going, well, bhí beánaí de bhí cinteacht chur mis mar sinne. Se thugaibh na bó faointí.
Dublin who defend the canal end in the first half, and thankfully the heavy overnight rain has abated and it's given us to go to half time. Trying to open up the play, getting inside John Murphy and this is the most vital kick to keep Cork in the Ford lead. Half a minute into injury time, Cahalán beats away and Cork have stolen into a 1-point lead. And Declan Sheehan advance on goal. They squandered a few chances in the second half. Barney Rock's got and it's no more than they deserve. So So half an hour's extra time to be played to decide who goes forward to the semi-final. He's ready to throw the ball in. There's no Cork team here. There it is. Dublin the only team on the field. This is absolutely ridiculous. Barney Rock with no opposition. The first, the only time I have seen this at Croke Park. Dublin score a goal, and presumably this absolutely farcical end to a football game proves that Dublin are the team to qualify for the semi-finals.
Sean Boylan, you were in Croke Park there watching two teams actually that Meath would play later on in that championship, Cork and Dublin. What did you make of the scenes that happened at the end of normal time with no extra time, no Cork team on the field? They were gone away home.
It was the whole thing. It was absolutely bizarre, and whether they were looking to get a replay down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh or whatever, I don't know. But all I can say is that time, extra time, was part and parcel of the game. And when they didn't come out, the reason given was because they had booked the train and so on, and they went out and got on the train. And I never saw as many players in my life as dejected as I did the Cork lads outside, because we didn't know for about 15 minutes what was happening. And so then some of the Dublin supporters started slagging and pretend that they were chicken and so on. Now, if you knew that Cork team was proved afterwards, they were certainly anything bar chicken, like particularly the man who scored the penalty. You know what I mean? And like so, but in a strange sort of way, as Cyril would talk about, they going on to win the league that year. Dublin, if they got to that league final, you know what I mean? The way they'd like to have got to it, you know what I mean? With that extra time, but it distracted, it took from it, and look. It was a pity, one of those bizarre things that shouldn't happen but did happen.
Okay, and I suppose it did maybe galvanise the Cork team a little bit because it was a bit of a farce. And Cyril, from your point of view, did you ever see anything like that happen in the hurling game?
No, not really. No. Like I didn't really. Like I never saw, like, as Sean said, extra time was part of it that time, you know. But they had Frank Murphy be a strong administrator that time, and like usually he'd win all. I never saw him beating the corridors of power. That was the only one I've ever seen him kind of lose. Like, you know. It was bizarre, really. Like, I've often seen a game called off, like a hurling game at half time when things get out of hand. No, that's a different thing. To sound very bad, but no, I never saw anything like that. No.
Well, you do is a sliotar, is it?
Yeah. So we mightn't have a sliotar. I saw a referee one day, he got such abuse at half time. Both teams were back out to play the second half and no referee. No one realised he was gone home. Game was abandoned. So it sounded very bad.
All right, so a version of that. And Gary, dúite tá tusa tréis go leor chláracha a dhéanamh I de chúram le RTE mar hampla. Ar tháinig tusa riamh trasna ar scéal eile den tortin?
Ní féidir an cuiinú bhí híle ar scéal gan tortin, agus cosúnta bhí sé ráite ag an ná ben leis scéal a thug le chorca nar insiú gan na feiminí go meach an breise an a tháinig sé amach níos dúrna guríonn siú de chuideach go bheith, deirta náríonn siad do féidir an taobhí ar mhór a chrám go chorca an breise naí go ceap agad bhí an naíle. Agus Barney Rock agus an clusters was for that more like for Barney Rock and Leo there for real best to the harla is doilum go an rud behan is come hello agus a chahan and rates or Leo and arda gan and Katie Corrick at a bark na himmer will and clip a heart agus push roots ni kuine from ein wat gehesteach ekal rief ik glyph pen na amaniachte.
Yeah, well, mar a dúirt me chuig á clia a raig go dín cléthe leithleanis agus go dain go dín cléthe canis agus bhuadar an trachamórtas I bell an bblion orthisin in aig chiarí dal an scéil. Ok, bogam míad a raig péis scéile agus fecha míad inis ar conas a bhí ag gluthe canis na hamána sa trachamórtas. Gaileh a thugaig ar an chlár agus seo na buach faointí.
And a penalty after 14 minutes with Owen McMahon. So the first moment of drama in the fourth final. It's a goal! The sides are level and Joe Cooney has done the damage. In towards Brendan Linsky at full forward. Ian O'Ryan leaving it for Joe Cooney. Another great goal by Joe Cooney. The goal poacher supreme, Joe Cooney. Two places once again. Johnny Calnan. In towards Tommy Guilfoyle. A goal! Smashing score by Tommy Guilfoyle. It's Ger McInerney who's taken the free, going for a goal. He's got it and Clare in front. 2-7 It really is anybody's game now. But here's Linsky at the other end. There's another goal chance here for Galway this time. Anthony Cunningham. It's a goal! Quick as a flash. There's the whistle, and Galway are the champions. It's Galway's league title, and what a titanic struggle we got. There's one of the heroes of the hour. Proud moment now on this breezy afternoon for Conor Hayes as the cup is held aloft. The Ford League Trophy goes west to Galway.
Cyril, you've already mentioned the importance of the league that year. So maybe just go over that particular performance, because you always had the big issue of having a long run in then to All-Ireland semi-final time, and to be ready for the All-Ireland semi-final must have been really hard, taking that gap into account.
Yeah, we'd always like to get on well in the league in the sense that you were playing later on into the year and you get the competitive matches. That time we'd have a match or two before Christmas, and then after Christmas you'd have the rest of the league games. So it was important to get a good run. Also, it was important for us to win because we had lost all the finals the previous year. So just to get a win under the belt before the championship. We go into full-time training the end of May and June for the All-Ireland campaign. We'd play a quarter-final against All-Ireland B winners. Now, we'd be expected to beat them, but the funny thing is, like, they would have won 4 or 5 matches and they'd put it up there for a certain amount of time. And then after that, if you get over that one, you play the Munster or Leinster winners. Now, it was a short run, but you had to be very right coming from the training ground because there was no second chances. I'd be cotton to fellas now that had known the county team. You're spoiled. Like, you can lose 2 or 3 times down window, and that time, if you lost by a point, you were gone to the following August or July again. So it was a long wait.
And Ger Canning mentioned in his commentary there, Joe Cooney had a brilliant game that day. I think he got 2-6. And at 22 years of age, it was kind of his coming of age year, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, like he was an absolute talent. I had him, say, as a minor, you know, would you believe my first minor match, would you actually, I tell you, I played him in goals, would you believe? You could play him anywhere. And after that, like, I had him under 21 all along. I remember going down to his father's house, asking the father and mother. He was very young at the time. I brought him into the panel. Look, I said, it's all right if I take him in. And I remember Rick Cooney, he's an old man, a good worker, hard worker. He said, you may as well take him in. He said, sir, he's not doing much here anyway. No, he would be working hard. He would be working hard. Like, there'd be no silver spoon. These boys be used to work. Like, but I wanted to bring him in early and kind of look after him. He was a great talent. He has sons now that are great hurlers as well. It's funny the way the genes work, you know.
Oh, yeah. Brishan and Duchas Triholan, quite Marajafter. Carculor will bog me the Raganish Kursi Pella Arish. The Gestresh, the Houndin and me, Leash, August and Son Kildara, Achli, a grave Homortis Lion, Hassadar Hain, August Clea, Erichela, a Glehekanish, Nablianishan, Dandara Ur, Asichela.
The Dublin captain, Jerry Hargan, won the toss and elected to play it down towards Anton McCall. A good run by Joe McNally. He has 2 men to his right. He looked for the point himself, Joe McNally. Good play by McNally. 2 points to 1. Dublin are on the scoreboard. This line ball to me then. Liam Hayes, well driven. Knocked down in front of the goal. Brilliantly by Matty McCabe. An opportunist goal. And now a bout of fisticuffs has broken out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players involved there. While referee Seamus Aldridge was talking to Mick Lyons, the players were not content to let Aldridge run the game and get on with his business in the middle of the field. To Colin O'Rourke, a great catch by O'Rourke, bursting his way forward. Looking for the point, under intense pressure. And he's got it. That's the score of the game for me. Seamus Aldridge blows the full-time whistle. Meath supporters swarm onto Croke Park. Another tremendous victory for Meath on a scoreline of 113 to 12 points.
Sean, Liam Hayes referenced in his book that the previous All-Ireland semi-final, that Meath had learnt a lot from Kerry, not only in terms of play and skill, but also in terms of how physical that Kerry team were, and that was something that she brought into that 87 campaign. Was that a new thing for Meath to say, because we saw plenty of physicality against the Dubs in that particular game, but that standing up and that having a more physical approach was something you had to bring into your play?
Well, you realise it was part and parcel of what we were on. It was part and parcel of the game, and you could be the loveliest footballer in the world, but if you weren't able to be competitive, if you weren't able to win your ball or whatever, you know, you put your head in the line really, and that's the way the lads were. And sometimes the lads got hurt, but usually not that badly hurt, thanks be to God Almighty. But it was people never realise when you look at, because there's so much talk today about the gym, how physically strong Kerry were, Dublin were, Cork were, and our lads were physically very strong, naturally very strong. But that agility and that quickness and speed and everything else, and it was an extraordinary campaign. And there were a couple of things I'd have to say. Early on you mentioned, Gary mentioned about sort of the lottery and everything else. At the launch of the lotto that year in February in the Royal Hospital, I was with Ollie Campbell, and I said, Ollie, will you do me a favour? And he said, if I can. I said, I've a great lad. He's not a free taker, but I think he's everything that it needs to be a free taker. And he took on Brian Stafford, and he coached Brian Stafford, all right? And he became an immense, he was just huge. He was the difference that we had, probably from the last number of years. Anyhow, when it came to the All-Ireland final, Ollie wouldn't go to the match. He said, no, I've seen so many lads when I was playing rugby for Ireland, he said, who go to matches all the time, couldn't get tickets. I'm not going to take a ticket from somebody at the time. But when we got as far as the Grand at Malahide, Ollie was there to shake Brian's hand. But what we didn't know was we were going down to Ballinamore. Mick Lyons himself presenting medals to kids. It was the night that Gary O'Hare was captured, and we were stopped 14 times by the guards and the army. And when they all saw Mick put the arms down, they all got Mick's autograph, right? But we had got a tape earlier in the day from the hospital in Trim of Micheál O'Herthig's commentary, and he said, Brian Stafford, the man that when he goes practicing his freeze, he brings the dog with him to dribble the ball back to him. And I said to Mick, the lazy dibbler, said he wouldn't even run after the ball. So
yeah. It's amazing that Ollie Campbell and Brian Stafford had, was it more the psychological end of things that Ollie and Brian were working on together? Because obviously you'd imagine that kicking the rugby ball and kicking the Gaelic football would be very different. What I didn't realise was that they actually had never physically met. They talked over the phone. Brian Stafford was like that. You could not distract him once he had made up his mind about something. And the very first match was a challenge match against Cork. And it was across the Crease Street because the Páirc Uí Chaoimh was flooded. And every free he took went wide. And after the match, I went over to him. I just said, listen, that was brilliant today. So what are you talking about? He said. I said, you never changed what you were supposed to do. Because it was so slippy, he couldn't hold his standing foot properly. But that, he couldn't believe that I would say that to him. But that was absolutely true, and that's the way it was, and changed the course of history for me. Meath. Absolutely, and he had a tremendous year, of course, that particular year. Okay, go cuasaí amhána a rísling in éis agus tréis de chailh cáilúdach le cheannis na hÉireann mar dhéanaidir. Thugad ar siúd gur iarrainn nua a bhí a teacht amachchas chuig go móin. Tibradáin a bhí tréis créimh na móin a bhuachan den géadúr a 1971, an tamsa in ag corcaig a bhí tréis chuig as i chéile a bhuachan dribh sin. Bhí na tibradaigh a teacht ach an bhaidir sin nabh an uachtar a áil ar chailh se de bóg faointí.
The check on the watch by referee Jerry Kirwan then, getting ready. So will it be Tiperaire's 31st or Galway's 16th All-Ireland final appearance? Tipperary playing into the goal on our right, Nicky English, and he's got the opening score after just 9 seconds. Towards Joe Cooney, taking it back himself. Here's Linsky unmarked, but quickly closed down by the Tipperary cover, but they've left a loose man on side as Martin Naughton should be the equaliser. It's a goal! Galway have got in front! Trying to get the forward line moving, succeeding in doing so with Pat Fox darting inside goal, pursued by Jerry McInerney. Tipperary going for goal! Fox the scorer! Tipperary are in front! Meanwhile, in front of goal is Éanna Ryan, bracing down on Ken Hogan. It's a goal! It's a Galway goal by Éanna Ryan! It breaks down. Anthony Cunningham towards Éanna Ryan. Can he seal it here? To no lane. Loftus Compton has scored. That surely is that now. Galway have booked their passage for the All-Ireland final, beating Tipperary for just the second time ever in the championship. Full-time score, Galway, 3 goals and 20 points. Tipperary, a very gallant Tipperary, 2 goals and 17.
Yes, Cyril, I suppose the goals in the second half in Orion and then No Lane, of course, coming in as a sub, were the turning points, weren't they, in that particular game? You used to start Noel a lot on the line, and Galway supporters used to be up in arms a bit about that, weren't they? Just give us your reading of why you used to start him and bring him in, then start him on the bench and bring him in later on.
Well, we've been beaten in all the finals that I told you in '86, and we used to always meet in Phelan Murphy's house at the end of September, October to review the year with Bernie O'Connor selector and just have a general chat. And we kind of felt that we kind of lacked something to come on to push us over the line. And like I was saying, the lad that had the capability of doing that was Noel Lane. Now, he was also good enough to be on the team, so there was a dilemma. And they were saying, look, I said, lads, we have to make up our mind, no matter how good he's playing, we need someone to change because we were losing. You know what I mean? We're playing well, we're not winning. So, like, he had a very good semi-final against Offaly, one of them years, and like again, he got a lot of scores. But again, he had that ability. But that time, we did a lot of hand passing. You could even score the hand pass some of them years as well. But he was a game changer, and you need that. Like now, you see it very common in the game. Like you need to use 20 players. That time it wasn't as common. Like a sub would only come on unless the lad was nearly carried off or playing maybe real bad. But like usually the starting 15 would be the best 15, and they'd nearly stay on through thick and thin. But now like you'd be checking to do so many trackers on them. But even still, it's a 20-man game. That time it wasn't as much. But like there's no doubt about it. In my time, Lane was the man that got us over the line. Like awesome. No lad likes to be dropped, but like he got us over the line each time that I needed him anyway. Like
He had the Midas touch, hadn't he?
Yeah, you see, you get the goals. That's what it's all about, really. Just to get us, that extra points. Because Tip that time were coming with a great run, and they had a great team. Like
he did believe in himself, hadn't he, sir?
Yeah, oh yeah, he believed he could do it. Like that's that comes from experience. He was around a long time. He was there in 78, 79. Like, and he was one of the senior players at the time because with a lot of young fellas thrown in.
And did he ever give you grief on that, Cyril? That he'd prefer to be starting.
Oh, sure, Lord, he'd say, why are you dropping me? I'd say, you won't realise until you become a coach yourself. I need you to do a different job. Like, geez, no one likes to be dropped. Like, now we became great friends afterwards. But, even telling him the first night that he wasn't playing in the final after scoring, I know it was 1-6 or 1-8 against Offaly. I said, you're not starting before I announced the team because I knew like he'd be upset. And he said, what did I do wrong? I said, nothing. I remember going to Michael Coleman the same night saying, Michael, you're starting. And he said, who am I starting for? And I said, no, Lane. And he couldn't figure out that because Lane would be a forward and Coleman would be in midfield, strong and hard. I said, look, you're not going in there, you'll be midfield. I'll tell you again what I want you to do. Don't worry. But don't just phase in. Most people thought it was a con. You know what I mean? But like, Sean will tell you, there's things you have to do to win. It's not an easy. You'd love to pick everyone, and you have to be hard enough as well. Like, you know what I mean? There's big decisions to be made. Like, and that time, sure, it was the top of the place. But once I won, it was lovely. If I lost, I'd be shot. But like we had lost other two, so it was a gamble, I know. But I still believed him that he'd do the job.
Yeah, and Sean, for you then, I mean, in terms of say you had your 15, but you also had, I suppose, 5 or 6 who could add something. Was that mix ever hard to keep going? That to cultivate that we're all in this together, whether you start or whether you come in?
In '85, the team came to me and they said, "Listen, you put your shyness in your arse pocket." That's what they said to me. And from then on, the chairs went round the circle. So the windscreen was generally fairly clear going out. But you saw Matty McCabe early on there in Leinster. He was the greatest goal poacher. There were so many people like that on the team. And Kyler, look at the man became a genius. You know what I mean? They could do a job that nobody else could do because it can be very difficult to come into the heat of a Leinster final or an All-Ireland semi-final or final or whatever. Joe Castles, Tony Hanlon said, or Kevin Heffer got good to him, said to me about Joe Castles. Who would ever tell me these 5 great forwards that Meath had, and that Smoky Joe, as he called them, he gelled the whole lot together. He created the space. And again, that was something that people wouldn't have realised, that he was the linchpin. And that very first match against Kildare was his first time in the start of that Leinster Championship. It was his first time. And to come along, not only winning All-Ireland that year, but the following year, having been injured all year, in the replay of the All-Ireland final, to lift to Sam Maguire the day before his 34th birthday. Incredible stuff.
All right.
17.
Absolutely. Okay, well, Trish, an bhí an lábhan uachtar áil á clia mar sin na gluthe canis lein mar a chunicimar. Isteach an cluthe lechanis na hair an bechearta mar rá lo an son agus thugad a raig hampí ní chuig a ola sin deire.
Hayes and McEntee, McGilligan and Murphy. And so, this All-Ireland football semi-final underway. Will it be Derry's second or Meath's 10th All-Ireland final appearance? Meath playing into the goal on our right. An early chance for them. Oh! Over the bar from Colm O'Rourke. Nice ball from Beggy to Castles towards O'Rourke. Lovely combined football. It's David Beggy again. Getting inside 40 metres, 30 metres out from goal. There's a scoring chance here. That was the sensible thing to do. Plunkett Murphy. Good shot from outside and a nice point by Paul Keeley. Meath for the final for the 10th time in their history in 4 weeks' time, overcoming the challenge presented by Derry.
Sean Boylan must be the happiest man in Ireland tonight. Your team is in an All-Ireland final. You've always wanted that, Sean.
We always wanted. It's a long time since 1970, Jim. We're looking forward to it.
You never lost sight of the dream, though, Sean.
I don't think so. No, never. Thanks, Jim. Okay.
It feels brilliant. First time in 20 years to be part of it's just something else. So you can only see out the reaction. That's great.
Already, can you think of the final? What it means to be in an All-Ireland final?
It's just, it hasn't really sunk in, you know.
What about your supporters?
Brilliant. You couldn't ask for any better.
Ryan Stafford there, Sean. All-Ireland semi-finals I want to ask your opinion of, because obviously the final itself is a huge event, a magnificent occasion. The semi-finals, people have often said they're there just to win, to get over the line. You were comfortable enough 15 points to that particular day, but how much of a relief was it?
It was a huge relief because Dermot McNicholl had come back from Australia and he was just dynamic.
Derry's main forward, yeah.
Yeah, we've been in the semi-final the year before, and but to see the way Kevin Foley and David Beggy and so on, all those lads played that day, they changed it. And of course, Rocky was the poacher supreme, but it was, see big Brian McGilligan in the middle field and Jerry McEntee, what a battle it was. So we knew that it was going to be really, really difficult because the Derry lads always have that great belief in themselves, and rightly so. But and I think it's what set us up probably more than anything else. It might not seem very tough, but actually was a really tough match.
Louis, Sean and son Dermot McNicholl, Gary, Anna Imroor, Gertig sé hain tan an stolam chuirsteachar agus dimmer sé. Bhí immert, ní ra panel rohúr ag dira. Agus is tócha péisiant a bhí gan McNicholl ag immert gomá dimmer sé stolam 17 nómat nuair ag an gléthe sin, a gan éibh éifeachtach. A raibh seans riamh chun a bheithe gan é an dóla.
Ní dóla mé agus líosca de carta bhí McNicholl, bhí stíl all in Imroor tusa chos gilúil agus a bhí an insna hochta dí ar fad. Ináí fiú an damrad ag gur McNicholl ag immert aclaí an lásin ní dólam gomach an láb an uachtar fáte chun denimí. Sália, níor scuil chun denimí ein chúlaseach a gunne blaclaí a gulfi canis lein, níor scuil siad chúlaseach a gunne rere, níor scuil siad chúlaseach fiú an is a gulfi canis. Bhí sé andachar cúla scóráil Mickey McQuillan agus the lines is Robbie O'Malley, Liam Harnan, the botchin ar fad. Bhí sé andachar cúla scóráil ar chun denimí agus ar nói bhí níos cideach a bhéin chun tusa. Bhí ábal a scórnaí amsú freisin agus a dói mar ledóg a bhí gimmert ar garú mar thosach bhí andas agamsa ar lehead Bernard Flynn, Colin O'Rourke agus Brian Stafford ach go háirithe imar íontach agus ní dólam damrad ag gur McNicholl aclaí go meach an láb an uachtar fáte ag Derry an lásin.
Agus Gary, ar a déh eile den taranca áras bhí gaiileh agus Corcaigh tuairdaigh ar a chéile. Bhí cóscóracha an chéad le agus bhí iirecht mirúltach ag Larry Tompkins de Corcaigh ó Deirtar 65 slaat amach, ní lisa go a bhéadach sé bheith ó fada sin. Níos go raibhtú ag an cléise sin nó ag an áhimmert. Ach bhí ar híal gaiileh go méid a go meach na pedadóirí ábal dul an tróir fad fé mar na hamána an blian san.
Bhealach besáid seo deir ré le for an pelle na gaiileh a chuach fada le clufi caneseachtú trí, clufi le caneseachtú cethir. Agus mar a dúirt tú puinte an dúir nach beagnach an breise ó Larry Tompkins ar bruch lá I Barca Croca ó bhhad amach hína híine ag an tíb. Ach an armert sin sin is do is am 8 pointi ag gunne hin de cehar nu slad do chretie amachchas amach a bhíán agus for Larry Tompkins 1 pointi ag a lásin agus Lewis Sean boilen Larry Tompkins an sin agus chonigmar an skille vi ag mar lad vi an na kicken is sé hog a ko cookie an immer expression nach with de ra vi sin goile mar na reidirlo kríf chonachta ruchtta le ri die ní necha koig a fó sein ví sein go le a Cork agus an bí gus na fornisig.
All right, but fecha míid mar sin conna sa chuig an nahimmert, so treis de Gaiileh agus de Corcaigh cóscóir a bheitcha a bhuichas Tompkins agus an íireh dénach sin, chasad ar a chéile ag lethe bhí an taobhach go maith san nahimmert.
So what does he want? Giving it to Teddy McCarthy. Back to Tompkins. The direct shot at goal. Oh, lovely accuracy. The second point from play. It's the 6th point in all for Larry Tompkins, the game's top scorer. Held it off beautifully for Cleary. For Tompkins, rather. Back to O'Driscoll. That's a good finish. Cork doing everything right in the second half. It may have been a lacklustre first half. They're still attending to Gay McManus. Galway down to 14 players for the moment as Gay McManus Burke plays it in Sam Stephen Joyce for Barry Brennan. Third time lucky, maybe. Yes! It's no more than he deserved. And once again the fullback takes it from the clouds. And it's Cork for the final. The men from the south were not to be outdone at the second attempt as they easily beat the Connacht champions Galway by 18 points to 1 goal and 4.
Sean, I'm sure you were there as a spectator that particular day too. That was a very comprehensive victory for Cork. Did you look at Cork and sort of start to pick out things that you could be able to capitalise on when it came to the final?
Truthfully, I was more looking at it to see, the collective team from Colin Corrigan to Conor Coonahan, right the whole way along. Shea out in the middle of the field, Larry, but then you had Dinny Allen and you had Barry Coffey and John O'Driscoll and like great footballers. You know what I mean? And you just said, hang on, these lads are playing with the system. And so what we had to try and do was be confident about the way we played, and as best we could, to try and absorb like Jimmy Kerrigan flyer. You know what I mean? To absorb whatever pressure they put on us, and subsequently proved in the final that they put awful pressure on us at the start and went well ahead. Lucky enough, we got back into the game. But again, after the Derry match, there was a different confidence in our own lads. We were more worried about ourselves. You see, Larry would have played even from the time he was 16, would have played minor against me, against the likes of Liam Harnan and so on. And Shay, like, we knew how good they were. But like, we probably didn't realise really how good Mike Cahalane was. You know what I mean? And all of those lads, Anthony, and they were class act. And we just, what we had to do more than anything else was have that belief in ourselves that we got a chance, we'll take it. And that was it.
And that was it. I want to ask you about Larry Tompkins and Shea Fahy. So two who had come in from Kildare, had come to Cork, had transformed that team really. I mean, what do you think they added to Cork? And what do you think was the fact that they were Kildare and that you were Meath and you were next door neighbours, was that an extra incentive to get one over them? And what did you think generally about players transferring at the time?
Well, at the time, you see, Shea was moved down with the army. He was moved down to the barracks down in Cork, and Larry had come back the previous year. He'd come back from America, and he was very disappointed. He felt he should have been treated better. And what do I mean by that is, like, he didn't know very long before the first round of the championship that he was going to be brought home, and it was a controversial time for him. And he said afterwards that he wouldn't play with them again, and it didn't matter who it was. And he went back to America, and then he came back, and he moved down with the lads in Castlehaven, and he just, like, what an addition he became. Sometimes you have to go away to be appreciated how good you are. He was, to me, the first real professional footballer. Like, just look at the physique, just look at the cut of him, look at the way he trained, look at the way he prepared himself. He was a thorough pro, and it was an awful loss to get there. But again, sometimes it's like in a family, it takes ages for something like that to heal. You know what I mean? But like, he didn't fall out with his pals in there, but he just couldn't wear that jersey if they weren't going to look after people right. And that was Larry All's life.
Okay, and Cyril, just while we're talking about the American angle, obviously Tony Keady was the one that people talk about in terms of, say, playing in America briefly and then coming home and the whole saga that happened a little bit later on. But for ye, I mean, ye did have issues, did you not, where you had that huge big gap. Sometimes there wasn't a whole pile happening club-wise in Galway, that fellas might disappear for a few months at a time, go to the States, come back. Was that something that you factored in during those particular years? Yeah,
I had two good lads, I had Pete Finnerty and Jerry McInerney just go. But I knew when they were coming, we had arranged that they'd be back. You know what I mean? They were back for the block of training, and I suppose they were the first full-time professional players, really, because when they came back, we were looking after them, what they were getting abroad, and we had them coaching young fellas, you know what I mean? So they were mine. If I was training 2 or 3 times a day, they were mine, you know what I mean? I had full approach on them. So they were back full-time training, and they were home for that 3 or 4 months, which I need them. They'd be missing for the league, usually, you know, they'd be gone for the league and back again. But we had a kind of, we knew that they were coming, we knew they were going. Now with Tony Keeley, Lord Mercer, was different. We didn't know he was staying on. The next thing, all the turmoil. But like the 2 boys were kind of, they weren't going back and forth. When they went, they did a 6-month block over there, and that we had them full time. So I'd often say to them, "Les, you're the first time professional hurlers of all time."
Yeah. Colin Coyle Mihal was with me. Like Colin used to go to Chicago, and after we played a league match early on in the year, we just weren't thinking right. We were still living off having won the 86 Leinster, and I knew Coyle was annoyed, and he went and he headed off to Chicago, and so I rang him 3 weeks before the championship. I knew he'd look after himself. I want you home at such and such date, and that was for the second round of the Leinster. And now he went through a rough enough time because the lads didn't make it easy for him, because they apparently thought he walked out, but he hadn't walked out. We were messing. We weren't preparing ourselves right, and that's the story. He was a serious character, and Marty was the same after it, sort of 86, Martin O'Connell. And he pulled out of the panel, but again rang him, and still see his big curly head on the terraces, and ringing him after the match. Now, come on, see you train Tuesday night. And that was
John.
that.
Did you always like say, look, if a player wanted to go, you let him go? Was there any question of saying, look, you have to stay?
Look, when we won the All-Ireland '96 and Graham Geraghty got the trial with Manchester City, right? Or it was Arsenal, sorry, I beg your pardon. Yes. And umpteen people said, stop him. She couldn't do that. Like it was right, and he loved it. The only reason he came back was he was homesick. It wasn't that he wouldn't make it. He would no doubt in the world about it. And what loss he would have been to us, you know what I mean? And then 3 years later, he captains the team in All-Ireland final.
Yeah, so enough said.
Yeah.
Enough said. Okay, and just before we look at the 87 final, Cyril, I want to go back to the Peter Finnerty thing. He had said somewhere, I read, where he said, look, if we don't win in 87, I'm gone. You know, that he mightn't have been for turning anymore. He there was an awful lot riding on it, wasn't there, in terms of say,
yeah,
well, we're only going to go so far.
Yeah, we'll see, that invested a terrible lot of time. We'd be doing blocks, now it could be completely wrong. We'd often do blocks of training 3 weeks in a row. No break, maybe twice a day sometimes. Take 3 days off. The boys will be fully committed, because we had no Connacht championship. We had no championship, so we had to be right when we left to play the quarterfinals, semi-final, finals. So it was all kind of in blocks. Now they might frown on it now, but like we used to take the 3 or 4 days off, but to be full time again. So like there was a terrible investment of time, and all these lads were young at the time, getting their job. He was a young cop at the time, probably thinking of getting married. There was a lot of things coming into it, so you'd have to take all them things into consideration. But like I'd be saying, look lads, you're lucky, you have your health. If you're in this thing, you have to be in it fully. You're either in it or out. But like, so when they would come back from America to be fully, you'd have them for the full 3 months. But like, it was always there. It was tough on the lads that played during the league. We won the league without Jerry Mack or Pete Finnerty on it. But like, when it come to the championship, you'd have to pick the best team. Like the lads would know that. You'd have your panel. No, the panel would be tight in the sense that they'd be working hard together. Our best matches, our training matches, would be coming training. I would never close the doors of training. And if the boys, where we be training at and right, the old fellas in the stand, say, when is your next match on? They wouldn't worry about the training. They'd want to see the match. You tell them maybe next Thursday week, and there'd be a big crowd in to see the matches, because the matches will be very competitive. That's where the real edge came into training, and to be flat out. But like looking back, like, there were great times. And like I'd always try to make the lads realise, like, they had their health. Where better place would you be? Thousands roaring you on. Look at all the lads. Be that young lad in from with a wheelchair. I say, look at that young lad in the stand. He can't come out here. Look what you're doing. Enjoy it. And it can be hard to do that in front of 80,000 people. If you enjoy it, like, you're going to play better once you kind of play with freedom, really, and belief. Belief is the big thing.
All right. Well, Pete Finnerty, agus Jerry McInerney ar Ashton, Glehe Canishin, agus Gary Dutcha mar Hakahor, Cinnte go raibh tustas sketamini art cosula galore the vaint in the Galva. Or if you've dochasuk, a mohuk shiv and Glehe Canishin, I kill Quinny.
Well, vi brishe Korean and not to Kuig going to Horka, no going to fall agus off the shade, my Horka, agus. So I speak, vi known freshing in Maslach Takiat in the Galva, if we Omani in the Galva, agus Hlushif to brisach siad de chrí, they'd break your heart. Sin rud a in Masco an Atlanta. A fósain ca me héinerá gur me dochas a nach tú seach agus Gahoria is though he Lewis Ireland sin an leline a bhí agin le Pete Finnerty, Tony Keady, Jerry McInerney. The Galibi session and leline custandach is fair bhí an riamh na back le ein rodella. Agus is though he gahamara an same rud a bhí an na gur gaile gimmers Kilchonne. Agus bhí quickly fós seachú cúige go seachú ní flippy beidir go chóir grúte ag gaile. A fósin cá héin rugur me dósach, beidir gur me ag guibh ach bhí me dósach mechmat an Kilchonne a chlí.
And Cyril, in comparison to Cork and to Offaly that you had played in the previous finals, Kilkenny obviously were going to bring a lot of physicality. Did that change your own strategy and outlook in terms of how you might have to approach that final?
Well, not really. Like, we're really concentrating on ourselves. Remember now, we lost 85 and 86. Now we had a few changes going in, and we figured we had our team in the prime. So we started really working on the minds. Like, this is our year. Believe in ourselves. We have our own little game plan. Nice and simple. We'd work the little hand pass, maybe 1, 2, 3. Not had the time to be done that. And now Kilkenny be very good at the hand pass as well. They probably invented it in the hurling sense anyway. But at this stage now, we had a settled team. We knew what we wanted. We had everyone kind of injury free. Our half back line was set in midfield. Everything was right. But we knew to be very physical because we played them in the 80. I think it was 86 in the league and in Thurles. We were blown out of it. Again, Sean referred to it there. Like, it wouldn't be kind of dirty play, but you'd have to be very strong on the ball, be strong on it and physical on it, because otherwise you'd be blown over. You can have all the nice lads you like. And like that day against Kilkenny, like now, like, should there probably be red cards all over the place or yellow cards, because that's the way the hurling was that time. And you got a belt, you gave a belt, but you got on and drove on. Kind of a hard day to play. But like, I remember saying to one of the Kilkenny lads after an All-Ireland final that the beat was in. You got one good goal and very kind of a sloppy goal. And he said, sir, once the green flag goes up, they're all good goals. And it stuck in my mind. Whether you kick it in or walk it in, once it's counted, it doesn't matter. We were ready for the battle. That match was more of a battle. That wouldn't be considered a classic or anything. But Galway, to me, we'd have been enough. Galway would have been enough of classics and not one that we want. Which was 3 points to 2. As long as we were the 3 points, I didn't matter. That to me, that's not a count.
An séú lá mar sin de bhean fór gaiileh agus cail chuinnig ag lethe canis na hÉireann se an slí chuise.
Linda here. Where have you come from, Linda?
Mike Cullen.
From Mike Cullen, yes. And who do you expect to win today?
Galway.
And so referee Terence Murray from Limerick sets the All-Ireland Championship centenary final underway. Breaks down between Ger Henderson and Joe Coney, breaks down to Martin Naughton. Naughton, steady. Naughton scoring. Having switched with Richie Parr. Up towards the penalty. Oh, it's a goal. No, it's not. Stopped by John Cummins. Oh, it's a great reflex save by John Cummins. Looking for an insurance goal for Galway. Joe Coney, hand pass to Ian O'Ryan to Noel Lane. The shot, save by Kevin. It's a goal. It's gone in. Noel Lane the scorer. And it's Galway who are the new All-Ireland champions. He's already received the league championship this season, and now he completes the double. Conor Hayes, the most successful captain, I suppose, ever of a Galway team.
Comedyg Fannach, Don Cornshaw, O'Kant, Tribliana, Fian Tarvin and you, August Tom Con McCarrick, a dollar Oscar Olive.
I had the trial and I played it anyway. Conditions were very heavy and humid, and fair play to the boys, we kept plugging away and took our chances, and I think we have done it for the last few years.
It's a great moment. I think it was time that Galway won All Ireland. It was a hard game today. It was hard fought all the way through, and I think we deserved that win in the finish. You know, the last 10 minutes we really proved it.
Yeah, as you say, Cyril, not a classic, but a massive victory for Galway. 112 to 9 points, so low scoring enough. 1980 had its dreamlike quality, I suppose, in the sense that it was the first in an awful long time. And then, of course, you were to go on and win again in 88. Was 87, after the defeats and the pressure that was on the team, was that the one that you'd count as the hardest one of the three that you were in charge of?
Yeah, they're all hard to win. Like, when you get in there, afterwards, we lads say, no, I'm not saying they're easy, but you've got to break with this, but they're hard to win. They're even hard to get in there. Like, even there, like I remember Joe clashing with Gerard Henderson. Gerard came out a cut hand, but you played on. There was no thing as kind of going off and stitches. You just kind of played on. You bandaged up. Look, there was trouble pressure going into that final. There's no point saying there wasn't. It was our third All-Ireland. Suppose we were beating it. Like that team would probably, I'd be gone. That's the way it was at the time. If you got beaten, you were gone. You were dumped out. Like there wouldn't be a queue for the job, but you just say, well, you're not winning. Even though there was no one winning before that either. But like that's the way it was, and half the team be gone as well. You know, like, but to beat Kilkenny in the final and to beat Tip in the semi-final, like we would be brought up on Kilkenny and Tip beating us out the not alone beating us in the fee, but out the gate as well. So to beat kind of the two of the hurling powers and say Cork would be the other one, that was a big thing to beat the kind of two so-called hurling powers. Now look, whoever you win the All-Ireland against, you're delighted to win it. But like that, it happened to be Kilkenny and Tip on the way. It probably made it extra special at the time. And there was a lot of the young team. A lot of that team had won a minor in '83 and under 21 in '86. You know, there was a young team coming with a few of those older stages. And again, like, you know, it had like Lane coming on again and delivering the goods.
All right. And Sean, for you now heading into the All-Ireland football final a couple of weeks later, I know that you paid a lot of importance to the fact that these Meath players were representing Meath people. I mean, you've already mentioned that things were tough in the country at the time, and that these were basically representing everybody from Meath. I know you brought the team up. You used to bring them up the hill at Tara and train with them and talk to them and make the picture an awful lot bigger than just the fact that there were 2 goalposts and 30 players on the field. So what did you do to instill that sense of belief and the importance of the match itself in the players leading up to the final?
I suppose beyond more than anything else, if you have people with you who don't question what you're talking about because they know you're not bullshitting, and it was they'd earned the right to be there. But if you do earn the right to be there, like Cyril was saying, I've been in 2 finals before that and beaten, you know, you get a chance at it. There's nobody going to hand it to you. No matter how much they love to see you coming up and love to see a new team there, you have to earn it, and you have to earn it on the day. And it was extraordinary when you looked at the hurling final earlier there, and Mick Loftus presenting the cup to Conor Hayes. Like, Mick Loftus, thank God, is still alive and well. And he was the only Uther on, and Cyril will tell you about that. After every match he went into the dressing room and he thanked the lads what they were doing for the game, what they were doing for Ireland. Do you understand? And that still applies. And the same applied at that time. We had such battles over the years. So you had Dublin and Offaly were so good in Leinster, and to get out was so difficult. And to take it to the next stage, it took huge grit and determination. But there was great talent there. We never would have done a sprint for 10 weeks before an All-Ireland. It was all ball work. Sessions were always open like Cyril's. Anybody could go in and watch it. But our panels were small. Deliberately, they were small. So that everybody who was there, you know, 24, 26 for the most, everybody who was there felt that they were going to contribute. There's nothing worse than be 10 or 12 more lads there and they know they can't play. I think that disrupts. And I just think that when that massive hunger is there, lads just driving each other on. Like Jerry could come back at the time he was involved in Tyneside, Newcastle, and they're doing liver transplants or whatever. But he was Jerry McEntee. And, you know, at the time, Parry might have been driving a digger. Do you know what I mean? Parry lines. And but they were as one. Do you understand? And they always remained like that. And they had a huge support and belief for each other. Kevin Foley was a vet below in Wexford. You know, wouldn't miss a training session. Remember, he got a bad knock against Armagh in a match. And at 8 o'clock the next morning, he's doing the cesarean below in Wexford. But, like, that's the way they were. They really wanted it. So Tara is part of who we are. It's what we are. And there's an energy there. It's not make-believe, but there is an energy there. And sometimes you have to harness everything that you can to help you to bring just to another stage. And we're very lucky to be able to do that.
And Sean, if you were to sort of take one element of what that Meath team was about and say this was more important than anything else, you know, like the skill and the ability and all that kind of stuff, but was that togetherness that you just described there, was that the key component in getting Meath over the line those few years?
Yeah, it was. There was an incredible honesty that even though the lads might have been palling around with each other for a long time, there was an incredible honesty. Every training session never lasted longer than the length of time of a match. It always started on time. It was over. And they knew it, but they were driving it. I remember one time giving them a Sunday off. We had been training on the Saturday. And I met one of the wives of one of the lads during the week. She said, don't ever do that again. They were saying, what's wrong with Boylan? He's getting soft. Do you understand? And they were driving it. And just look, all you were trying to do as best you can with Pat Reynolds and Tony Brennan was just to get the conditions right, because the ability was there. But there's nothing better than playing the best team in the land. And we were playing the best team in the land when we played Cork. We had no question in the world about that. And they went on to prove it, how good they really, really were. They were powerful battles.
And I know you're not going to, you're going to downplay your own role in all this, Sean, but I mean, you'd already mentioned yourself a couple of years back, you thought about walking away, half a dozen players coming up to the house and told you put your shyness in your back pocket or whatever the expression was. And then there were incidents, I know the one that was often quoted, the one where Bernard Flynn and Andy McEntee started rowing at a training session, and you said, I'll take the two of you on. Like, what was that like? That kind of mix of you stepping it up to these players who are some of the most, physical and dominant players of their time back in that era.
Well, that time with Andy and Bernie, it was, that it broke up the bit of mess that was going on. And I set them on a lap around the field. And of course, when they got to the top corner, it started again. But I meant it this way. Look, don't get distracted. Like, if you allow yourself to be distracted from playing, the match is over before you get your concentration back. And they've talked about it, and it was absolutely true. And I suppose if they lifted a finger to it, maybe I would have ran, but I don't know. I don't think I would. But it's just that, we're animals of habit, and we just had to get the habit of not losing the head, not getting involved with the crowd, no matter what was going on. If somebody got hurt or got injured, there were people there. You had Jack Finn, Burton, Mocky to look after all of that. But the most important thing was you do your job. And if you do your job, there's no point trying to play everybody else's position. But the most important thing is when you got it, you know where to go with it, and you knew what to do with it.
All right, well, fech mi den nish mar sin an gluthe canis agus gá iran nua détárá a tuairtaigear a chéile a sin an bhí heh bháin corcaig a déhheile agus sean slí a chuise.
So this is finally it. 4.5 months after the football championship commenced. It's all down to two sides. Jimmy Kerrigan here. Going to link up with John Cleary. Belting it inside, down towards Colm O'Neill. Got there ahead of his man is Terry Ferguson. And that's the opening point. For Tony Nation, cut out by David Beggy. Forward to Colm O'Rourke. Once again he's through. Once again it's dangerous. Bernard Flynn, again saved by the goalkeeper. But this time it's in. It's a goal by Colm O'Rourke. The defence making it difficult for them. Colm O'Rourke now looking for his options. David Beggy. Oh, a very high tackle by John O'Driscoll. Beggy plays on. Oh, lovely run by David Beggy. It's a lovely point, but the sides are level. But there's a right little tangle out of the ball. Billy Morgan there and Jerry McEntee. Let's hope tempers will cool down here. And there it is. Yes, Meath have won the All-Ireland final. They've won their 4th football title, the first since 1967. So the cup, which was shown off for the first time in 1928, it's going to Meath. Mick Lyons, the captain, his proudest moment ever, I'm sure, as Sam Maguire makes its final journey to the banks of the Boyne.
I'd just like to thank the panel of players who put in such an effort all year, and I mean every one of them. And one man especially I'd like to thank, and that's Sean Boylan.
One of many alpha males on that particular team. It was a big match for both counties, wasn't it? I mean, I know that who was to know at that point that yourselves and Cork would be the team. You'd have this kind of all of a sudden this 4 or 5 year campaign where you were the two dominant teams coming basically out of nowhere and with huge opportunities. Kerry on the wane and maybe Dublin sliding a little bit as well. And then all of a sudden this opportunity presents itself. And who would have thought at that point that you would have gone ding dong over a number of years and winning All Irelands and you winning a couple and Cork winning one in 1990 over those subsequent years?
Nobody would have thought it, but it was just, but there were great footballers and there were great players. And you could see, Colin was 31 years of age. David Beggy was 19. And, you had that mix of the old and the new, as we would call them, but they were still just teammates. But when it came afterwards, even after 1990 with Cork bet us, we're in the hotel the next day together. and Jinxie starts the session. Now, we had been beaten, you know what I mean? But there was an intense rivalry, a huge rivalry, but that's what it took for both teams to win. There was fierce pride at stake. They're not called the Rebels for nothing, you know what I mean? And like, they were different, and they were different than any other Cork team I've ever seen, because they were so close, and the way they came together as one. Now, when they left Cork, they went on a mission. They were never going to have anybody stand at the side of the bus again doing a chicken. That was never going to. So we knew that whatever we did, we were going to have to earn it.
Absolutely. Gary, ceannas na bug faointí anna háchtacha in san gluthe ortha sin, a bhíon túsúntaach sin ag Corcaigh sa cluthe, and then yen Mick Lyons and blockall sias Jimmy Kerrigan, Ireach dar cool, agus monamach sé sin blockall ag Lyons covis beidir go mechan cluthe imechan troella.
But aber bhí an cluiche hochongarach Fork na Himmer an níor mór an in na fórne agus is stohí an cool for Culla Marorca in different Narida. Agus stohí mar a lutu dabach an cool sin fáte Kerrigan dit different dolwar the score there an leach. Is stohí bhí sé intach tíach mar hakahor gun felig an am brennu na fórne se mar bhí mit clachtach Kiri agus baila cléabeg na the Gimmert ignore gan na cluiche conditions na hochtu the yachtu cahar agus hochtu cuig agus marsin. A bhí ré nu mar lutu Taki chun cín le condemname agus chunda chorca agus bhí sé go hintach bheit ná na himróí iontacha seo eáil le head Larry Tompkins agus Shay Fahey agus John O'Driscoll as goilteach de gorca agus an sin nói na léchar fád ó condemname agus the Mick Lyons agus Jerry McEntee agus na láse agus is intach is ré gur chusma héna gur fear him godó ins na himróí agus a chuig an imrach siad agus na himróí fád feici den is Fork na Himmer agus is lecher carty na Himmery sin on needs a go to shaft to go fall.
And Cyril, you were having your feet up and relaxing and enjoying the All-Ireland hurling at this stage, but you probably looked in at that football and what did you think of that particular match and the intensity of it?
Oh yeah, well I'd be very I would be at the football. I'd be very close to the V team, and Sean there knows the screen lads and Sean himself was a very good friend of mine. You know, it's funny, we kind of ran in parallel that time Galway meet, and much the same style of hurlers. Like our lads didn't need to go to the gym either. They were all fairly hardy boys. You know, they were strong, physically strong, and fairly agile as well. So, like even on tours, they mixed well together. And I was saying to the boys, how did they mix well? And Linsky, the lads, I'm not sure. We're good at socialising. Like it might be great at hurling, but we're great at socialising. But they got on very well on tours. But we're always early together. At that time, they were nearly always together. And it was a great old, you know, like. Sport is funny, like the lads will be fighting on the pitch against turn out probably to be your best friends afterwards. Like you meet them everywhere, so they never let you down. That's the way it was, and there were great times. Like definitely when we won, we really enjoyed it because like they were hard to win. Now again, as I said, to be league games before Christmas, our club championship beyond in, to be a matter of trying out the panel and lads to get matches that usually wouldn't get matches. But it was a great way of trying out fellas as well. But you know, when you win, then it's a short reign because you win in September. And say when January comes, it's a new year. And okay, you have the Lee McCarthy, but the whole thing starts again. So you have to pick it up fairly. You are representing your county, and you are All Ireland champions. And every league game you played, well, you're there to be knocked now, like you know. So you're up there to be knocked, but it's a great place to be.
And Sean, it unfortunately took the passing of John Cairns from Cork for the Meath and Cork team to really gel in subsequent years. But there was a right bit of niggle, wasn't there, in that game? Did the teams respect each other, do you think, being the two dominant forces at the time? Or did you kind of both thrive on dislike of each other while that period of time took place?
There were awful strong-willed characters on both teams. And yeah, there was a dislike, but the dislike, it's funny how sometimes, you know, I remember Billy saying one time, you know, it's media failed. And Jinxie said to him, you know, he said, "Should we hated you just because you were right, you were going to beat us?" And that was it. But it wasn't hate in that sense of the word. But it was you just did not want to be beaten by them, and that was it. And because like you know, it's you get a chance at it, and so be it. Yeah, and poor Mick McCarthy and so on. There's extraordinary times, but it's extraordinary, like the friendship that is there today, and of course the constant is Billy, and the constant then with that is Dr. Con. You know what I mean? Just amazing people, and became the greatest of friends.
Absolutely. Okay, well, Sean, agus Cyril, agus Gary, gur míle maith as felling so an glár tróna na neomh le 9-8 seacht a phlé. Dá len scéil dá a bhailh se fechan deisteach ina bóg faointí go léir cuasaí a tharla agus denbar comá fit a fuirte idir na scéalta se go léir agus go leir cluí eile nach iad túnála géisteach chuig TG Cartron na dé danig ag go fethechan na sé I ggur GAA Gold. Agus be míad na reis le 9-8 an tam san tatan se hoing ar a bad chréile, go dtí sin, slán tama.